Hey folks, show me that here, Sebastian. Today we're going to talk about the state of the boards. There's not a week that goes by that I don't even get a phone call or an email. Someone saying, I want to buy a new board. I'm not sure what I want to get. Help me out. I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that. So we kind of want to deal with the whole thing of these boards. Um, let's start at the beginning. Let's look at one of the most, and I know I'm gonna get killed in the comments, but these are my opinions, so don't go too hard on me. Uh, some of the different boards that came along, and they've come, they've gone. One of the boards that have left a lasting impression on the church community is the Motif. I've had all of them, every single model, from the original classic to the XF. But probably the most I would say popular model is the ES8. That model has been used by many artists. Many gospel artists have gravitated to the keyboard. Has a great feel to it. You can get around the keyboard pretty decent. It had a sequencer and so forth. So it became very popular. And then our buddies on the West Coast, which most musicians look up to West Coast because they got that sound. The bands are hot. They sound amazing. But we've seen a lot on a lot of sessions. We've seen those keyboards being used. But now that keyboard is pretty old. I was just looking at my black XF. That keyboard's 10 years old. So I would say the ES is probably at least 15 to 17 years old, somewhere in there. You correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of these keyboards have grown long in the tooth. But one thing I'll say about gospel musicians, when we have something and it works and it gives us what we want, we kind of stick to it. But as a lot of these boards have gotten older and either they've broken, keys gone bad, or people just feel it's time to get something new, there becomes a big dilemma of what board should I get? And like I said, we're gonna have a discussion about the different boards. It's not gonna be like super technical, but just to give you a little background. Now, one thing I do notice about boards, a lot of us we buy what we see. And the manufacturers, they understand that the more you see their products on the bandstand, you're going to want it. If you didn't see anybody playing it, you wouldn't even think anything of it. We buy what we see. But that board has been very, very popular. I remember not too long ago, I got a rider from an artist coming into town. I don't want to mention the name, but one of the top gospel artists. And they said, we want Motif ES8. And at the time, I had sold my ES. I have another one now, but I had sold it because I wanted the XF. At the time, I said I have the XF. They said no, 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 no. It's got to be the ES. They had their sound sets. They would come with their cards where they could just plop it in, bring up their sound sets for their set, and that's all they wanted. And I've seen that widespread in a lot of different situations because I also do backline. Uh, and a lot of people want the ES8. It's that board. Even if you look them up now, resale on them, they're very high. It's still a board in demand. A lot of people still love it. But you have certain people saying, hey, that sound's getting a little dated. I'm getting a little tired of it. I want something new, want something a little more up to date. Okay, so now let's look at the different keyboards. Now, I'll say this, every single one of these keyboards I have owned except for the Roland Phantom. Come on, Roland, send me one so I can demo the board. So, out of respect for Roland, and they're good people, I have good friends over there, I don't want to comment on something that I haven't played. I mean, I could tell you what people have said, but I don't really want to comment on something that I haven't played, haven't fooled around with. But I've always been a big fan of Roland down through the years. So now, fast forward to now. You have, like I said, you have the Phantom, cool board. Some people like it, some people don't. I can't comment on it. Now, moving forward, let's look at the Kronos. Korg came out with the Kronos. For years, Korg was always dogged about the pianos sucked. They were great at ethereal sounds, but and it was a great like aux board. If you even remember back in the day, you would have that Motif ES8 on the bottom, and you would have that Triton on the top. Always, because the Triton had the ethereal stuff, the effects stuff, a lot of that stuff. Even with the older Roland Phantom stuff, the older Phantom, you would see that up on top. Certain boards get known for their pianos, and people like them for their pianos. So Yamaha was like that main bed, giving you that really good, solid piano sound. But now back to the Kronos. The Kronos, when it came out, it really took the industry kind of by storm because they did an incredible job improving the sound of their pianos. They had come a long way. They had the separate sound engines in there, which increase your polyphony. You could add in the different libraries. They did a lot to that keyboard. But correct me if I'm wrong, the Kronos was the first board to get close to that $4,000 mark. And I'm not talking about that big board that they had before that. That was like $7,000, $8,000. I forget the name of it. But the Kronos took a lot of the technology from that board, and they put all of these sounds, all of these engines, all in one board, and they climbed pretty close to that $4,000 mark. Because before that, most of the boards were around $2,500 to $3,000. So a lot of people like the board. Now, one thing I will say about that board, those electric pianos, oh my God. Kronos, you guys are killing in that department. Now, when it comes to the acoustic pianos, it's split. You got some people that love them, you got some people that hate them because opinions is a dime a dozen, and people like what they like, and you have to respect that. So the Kronos, I came from having the Triton. So some people were saying the Kronos was a little hard to navigate. Coming from the Triton, a lot of their architecture was still the same. So I found it pretty easy to get around. But I've heard comments, people saying, it's kind of hard to get around. And then the biggest criticism is you turn that on switch on and you go have lunch. And then you come back and then you play. They use a computer based system. I believe it's a Intel Anton chip, I believe that's in there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. And the technology at the time, it was very slow. One thing I've learned about keyboard companies, when they make these boards, a lot of the technology they drag to generation, because these companies, they spend a certain amount of money in R&D. So when they spend a certain amount of money in R&D, they project, I need to use this technology for at least 10 years. So I'm going to regurgitate the board in different names. Like, may you remember when the DX7 was out? Maybe some of you don't. But the DX7, they came out with the DX21, they had all these different variations because when they came out with the board, they had to milk it for a certain amount of time to get their money back from the R&D and just developing and making the board. Most of the companies do this. So now you have the Kronos, great electric pianos, a large palette of sounds. And you look at a lot of modern artists, they use them. I see Glasper, he's over there, he uses them. But a lot of artists use them. And it's a nice board for certain things. And I say that to say this. If you're looking for one board to be the end all, to be all, you're living in dream world. It doesn't work that way. That's why you see most artists with different boards, because certain boards do certain things better than other boards. So I think I hit most of the points on the Kronos. You guys can help me out in the comment section. But the long turn on, great electric pianos, and I have a few friends out there. My man Julius DeBerry, he swears by the Kronos. Every time I tell him I'm thinking about getting rid of it, he says, "No, that's a mistake. Never get rid of the Kronos." So it's still sitting there. Okay, let's look at the next board. The next board is the Montage. Okay, the Montage is an incredible keyboard. It does a lot. I love the way they keep updating the software to make it do more things. That kind of shows a certain level of dedication from the company towards the instrument, because the worst thing in the world, and all of us know companies that have done this, they've come out with keyboards, the keyboard was out for a few years, and they just dumped it and moved on to something else. They stopped supporting it, stopped doing updates, stopped giving you things to keep that keyboard going. And that's the worst thing in the world when you spend a lot of money and companies do this. So they've come out with the Montage. And this is my feeling. I could be wrong. Kronos came out with that board around $4,000. Yamaha like, hey, we could charge more for keyboards now. Now some people are gonna say, no, that's not it. Then when the Montage came out, it's around $4,000. And when I say $4,000, I'm talking about the 88 key versions. It's around, so for a while, those numbers, you would go into the guitar centers, they would offer specials one week, it would drop to like 35, then it go back up to 39, and back and forth. Then I think the Kronos kind of dropped their price a little lower to be competitive. I've had the Montage. Uh, I'm gonna say I wasn't crazy about it, but in all fairness, I should have given it more time. I end up getting rid of it. In all fairness, I have a number of friends that swear by them. Um, they're able to put samples into them from other keyboards, which I think that's one of the greatest assets a company can do, because it allows me, I may not be able to have that other keyboard that I want, but if I can get that sound and bring it over into here, that's going to make me happy. And that is one of the reasons, I want to digress for a minute. That's one of the reasons why I like the XF8, because they allowed you to put those boards in there allowed you to save samples and put sounds. Like in mine, I have the MKS electric piano. It allowed me to put the Power Grand from older model Yamahas in there. It allowed me to put a lot of the older sounds into the newer board. Now, when the Montage first came out, there was a little delay, but then they finally got that together, and now you can dump all the old sounds if you're accustomed to those sounds and you want to play them. Now, one thing I will say about the Montage, every generation, even with the motifs until the Montage, they always increase the fidelity. They're using better A to D converters. It's just cleaner. The sound is very pristine. And like I said, a lot of people swear by it, but there's some people that say they don't like it. They're not crazy about it. Okay, that's your Montage. Uh, a lot of musicians that came over from the Motif found it a challenge because Yamaha went a different direction of how they laid out. When they first came out with the board, it was kind of more of a performance board. They didn't even have a sequencer in it. Later on, they updated it and gave you a sequencer. But I saw like stacking sounds. It was a real cool and easy way to stack your sounds. It was different from the Motif. And I think for some musicians, when they get used to something, they want everything to kind of be the same way, and they decided, I don't like the Motif. Excuse me, the Montage is harder than the Motif, hard to program, blah, blah, blah. But I think a lot of people started settling in. Another note, spend time with your board. I mean, some people buy boards, they just play the internal sounds, but spend time with the board. Learn the board, learn what it does, learn its attributes, so forth. But I digress. So now, the next board we want to look at is the Nord. Now, I must say, and I was looking for a board for quite a while. I wanted to replace the Motif, and I was looking for a board. And one thing that struck me about Nord is they're a company that's really listening to musicians. And that's very good because this is something I want to say about the musical instrument companies. A lot of them, although these instruments are sold here, they're made in another country. They have engineers and developers that are not even musicians. Some of them collaborate some with musicians because they're coming from a technical viewpoint versus a musical viewpoint. And some of them, it takes them forever to get it. This is what we want. This is what we need. So when I came across Nord, I've been watching them for a number of years. I like some of the things that they were doing with their instruments. Now, let me start with the negative. And it's not really a negative. But I hear a lot of musicians say, "Oh, the feel, I don't like the feel." I'll say this, it's a different feel. No, if you're looking for it to feel like your Motif, it's not going to feel like your Motif. But like any other board before it, if you play a little while, you'll get used to it. Also, with the key touch, the velocity curves, once you adjust that to your touch, it's a great board. It's a great board. I love it. But one of the greatest features that I like about the Nord is I'm able to load in sounds from other keyboards. Like I have the background strings from the Yamaha, I have the MKS, I have a number of sounds from other keyboards loaded in. So it just gives you a convenience of being able to have the taste of the other keyboards that you may use or you may played in the past, have it in your current board. And they have it in a way where it's very easy to load. So that was something that really impressed me about them. Also, the way they lay out the board, the organ, the piano, the synthesizer, and then the effects. When you first look at it, it's like, what are all these buttons? But the whole point of it is to keep you out of so many menus and allow you to be able to grab a button and adjust something. Believe me, that means a lot. Now, another point I want to say about all the keyboards that I talked about, and this is a truth for, I'm talking to gospel musicians. Most gospel musicians that play in church or play gospel music, they want these great keyboards, but they only play about 4 or 5 sounds. Got their acoustic piano, they got their electric piano, they got their pad, they got their string, they got their brass when they're playing shout music. That's all they play. The stage piano is geared towards live performance because you can bring up stuff quick, have your stacks, have your layers. You can layer up to 4 different instruments at the same time. The keyboard has like 2 sides, and on each side, you can play 2 instruments. So you can stack it up and do what you want. Another thing I love about the Nord, the pristine quality of the sounds. They did an excellent job with the sounds. I find a lot of people, especially that's into piano and into that realism thing about pianos, they gravitate towards the Nord. Because another side note I'll say, as good as the Motif was, even like with the whole Power Grand and all those, it didn't really sound like a real piano, but it cut nice and it worked within mixes. But if you played a real piano and you played it, there were just differences. Now, like I said, some of y'all may disagree with me and y'all gonna beat me up in the comments. But I invite you to do that because everybody has an opinion here and everybody likes what they like. But I felt out of all the different boards that for this time that I really like, I really like the Nord. I like their approach. I'll admit it was a little funny getting used to at first, but I really like their approach. I like how they approach the instrument. I like how they listen to musicians in their development and the pristineness of their sounds. Very nice keyboard. Now, I'm going to get a lot of people is going to disagree with me. But I'm saying for me, I like the board. Like I said, I've had the other boards. They're nice and they have their pluses, they have their minuses. But all in all, out of all of them, my favorite, it took a moment for the Nord to grow on me. It wasn't like instant, oh my God. It took a moment for it to grow on me. And then as I started to delve into certain sounds, I was like, wow. Another thing they do, the way they do their samples, they have extra large, large, medium, small. So you can get different size samples. They give you a certain amount of memory. I believe it's like about 2 gig in there. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. So you could take stuff out, add stuff in. You just got to do your numbers, how much memory that a given sound uses. I think the extra large, they have a lot of multi-level stacks. And like I said, depending on the situation you're playing in, you don't always need the extra large. But that's my real thing when we talk about the state of the boards. It's there's just so many of them and they're wonderful boards, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what you like. So, what I say to people that call me and say, I'm interested in a board, go to the store, sit down, and you may want to take like maybe a day. Or if you know a backline company, rent the keyboard, take it home, play with it. Because that little 15, 20 minutes in the music store, you're not really going to get to understand the board. You should be prepared to go take it home for a day or two and really fool around with it. Take it into your environment, how it sounds in your environment. The music store is a different environment. Maybe the speakers, the monitors that they're using doesn't complement the board that much. But do that. And I think that if you take time, you will make a decision that works for you. Sebastian here, showmeat.com. We're out.